Now that we really understand what the continuous quality improvements process really means, we can move to thinking about implementation in our programs. So, what you see here is what's called the CQI cycle. And this is really the process that programs can take to adopt continuous quality improvement practices in their program. So, the first stage in this is the planning stage. And within the planning stage, programs identify kind of their major goals and construct a plan for meeting the program goals. They then move to implement that program. And throughout the implementation process, it's really crucial to be thinking about collecting data. And that data is useful as we move to the assessment phase. So the assessment phase looks to collect and look for patterns in data that will help us identify some areas of strength and some areas of weakness. After those strengths and weaknesses are identified, it's important to really dig into them and ask why. And that's what the analysis stage is really about. Asking, why did our outcomes pan out this way? And what can we do in the future of this program uh, to make it more successful? And then finally, after kind of going through all of these steps of implementing, assessing, and analyzing, it's important to revisit that initial goal that you had set out for the program and adjust as necessary. After you adjust your program goal, it's important to construct another plan. And as you can see, this process is very cyclical. So it's really about a program's staff and administrators coming together to assess and analyze and always continuously improve the status of their programs. So now that we've reviewed the continuous quality improvement cycle, we're going to now take a look at an example of how this CQI might be implemented at the program level. So take, for example, and this is a fictional example, a program called Building Blocks, Inc. And parents and community members have come to this program to notify the program that the third grade students across the district are struggling to attain high levels of reading proficiency on the standardized test, the MCAS. So Building Blocks recognizes that this is a problem, and they aim to incorporate some sort of programming at their site to supplement the reading that's going on in schools. And so the program staff comes together and creates a plan. And this plan for Building Blocks aims to have 100% of students in the program be rated proficient or above on the third grade MCAS literacy component. So they decide to integrate a 30-minute free reading block after snack time to meet this goal, since they know that practicing reading allows for higher reading proficiency. The director of Building Blocks, Inc. decides to use a 2-week testing period to test out this initial program. And before the reading time is implemented, the program administers a pretest where they administer a passage from the MCAS to gather baseline data. Additionally, the staff administers a rubric, or comes together and brainstorms a rubric to develop the characteristics that they feel would create a really successful reading program. So with this plan in place, the staff is ready to implement the program. The next step for Building Blocks is the implementation stage. And the implementation requires you to kind of act on the plan that you've made. So For building blocks, they've kind of administered their pre-tests, they've made the preparations, and so they launch in the implementation phase the free reading block after snack time over the course of that 2 weeks. And as they move through implementation, building blocks encounters many problems during the implementation stage. Many students are not engaged, and the staff decide to kind of keep a detailed list of all of the problems that they are encountering within that implementation stage so that they can revisit that list later in the process. So at the end of the 2 weeks, um, they have completed the implementation stage and they're ready to move on to the assessment stage. And as you remember, building blocks administered a baseline test at the very beginning of this 2 week period. So, as part of the assess stage, they administer the post test, and that will allow them to really track outcomes of the 2 week reading program. In addition to collecting kind of hard testing data, the staff decide to interview some of the program's participants to get some qualitative data as well. And so they select a few third graders to interview to determine how the program went. After collecting all of this data, the staff are able to kind of sit down and identify the areas of successes and the areas of growth from this program. And so, as they kind of have assessed and they're collecting this data, they've identified the strengths and weaknesses. They're ready to move on to kind of a deeper analysis of the data and the outcomes. And so, at Building Blocks, the director constructed a report of the MCAS progress made by the third graders using the pre-test and post-test. And she calls a staff meeting to discuss the problems that occurred during the implementation and to talk through some ways that the community feels could improve the program. So they come together, they share their data findings, and they ask the question, why did these outcomes occur? What was it in our initial plan that was unsuccessful? That allows them to move on to the goal setting stage. So they revisit their initial goal at Building Blocks, which was to improve the reading comprehension of students. And the Building Block staff all agreed that some kids, particularly those who were the lower level readers, got bored of the free reading time after a couple of minutes. So instead of reading, they collectively decide that they can serve their mission to improve reading comprehension by formulating um, a plan for those lowest level readers to engage them further in the free reading block. So, the goal that was agreed upon for the next implementation cycle was to structure a free reading block that engaged 100% of students. So, with this new goal, the conversation naturally led to the next planning stage. And Building Blocks Inc. decided to alter their plan to provide a variety of literacy based activity stations that children could choose to participate in if they struggled to read independently. So within the planning process, the Building Block staff really catered these stations to the interests of the lower level readers. So as you can see, the CQI cycle requires a lot of communication and joint planning between staff and directors. However, if you remember back to kind of the caveman cartoon, we know that this continuous quality improvement cycle can really create phenomenal and impactful programs for sites.